Hello everyone and welcome back to the Stepstone channel. If you're joining me here for the first time, I am so excited to have you. So, in my last video I mentioned that I was leaving in a few hours for a bit of work plus a holiday to Spain and Portugal. I actually left, I think I filmed that at like midnight and then left for Gatwick Airport 3 or 4 hours later. But anyway, I am back from that trip as of yesterday and I wanted to record again quickly just to, one, keep the momentum, but also show you all of the lovely crafty things that I picked up on my trip. Now, I've never done a haul video on this channel or really anything like it, so I'm really curious to understand how this is going to be received. I do know that some people have strong feelings about kind of other people's consumption or other people's making output. So if this topic isn't for you, absolutely no worries. I think that I have lots of other videos that you'd enjoy. However, when I have the opportunity to spotlight local craft-focused businesses, I really feel like it's important to do so. Actually, if I can get on my soapbox for a minute, I've lived in multiple US cities, towns and cities which used to have really thriving independent fabric and yarn stores, and in really all of those places those shops are either really struggling or they're gone already. If we don't patronize them when we can, businesses disappear, and to be honest, preserving them when I'm financially able is just more important to me than maintaining minimal stash. Anyway, I'm going to focus on Spain for this video since that was really the leisure part of the trip. We have a few stops to highlight, first Seville, then Madrid, and then a final grouping through Catalonia with a few different stops. You'll see city shopping, you'll see seaside, we have fabric, we have yarn. You can see a few things behind me now kind of nicely piled up to be able to show you. Anyway, I'm so excited to share this trip with you, so let's get into it. So for our first stop today, we have Seville. I would say that this was the most culture-heavy part of the trip, and we really just got to explore the city, take in the sights. We stayed in a wonderful little hotel, and I spent quite a bit of time getting able to knit by the rooftop pool while Josh was out like looking at bricks and architecture things. In terms of the activities that we did, my favorite was definitely the Royal Alcazar. Construction of this palace began, I believe, in the 900s, and you can just really see that stunning Moorish influence on the architecture throughout. I, of course, was a huge fan of the stunning tile work and the carvings. The tile work just gave me like inspiration for making a quilt someday. But Josh and I also just spent loads of time walking around in the gardens. There were parrots, there were peacocks. It was just very colorful and wonderful. We also, of course, went to the cathedral, which was very interesting and it's stunning. I can't say that I was particularly like happy or moved to see the final resting place of Christopher Columbus. To be honest, I didn't know that he was buried in Seville. His tomb is, of course, very impressive, but, you know, we all know what he did, so I just don't feel he deserves all that blame. Anyway, but beyond just walking around the city, which was also just a stunning place, we managed to catch a flamenco show. I've never been able to see flamenco dancing in person. I loved the technique of it was incredible, but the dresses and the shawls, there were all these ruffles and fringe everywhere. It just gave me so much fringe sewing inspiration. And Josh was definitely enjoying it too, especially that beautiful Spanish guitar music. Now, in terms of fabric stores, there are two that I really want to highlight where I made kind of meaningful purchases. The first is Julián Lopez. This is the big fabric store in Seville, and it's actually a chain, so we'll touch on it again when we get to Madrid. This shop is arranged over 2 floors, and I would say it definitely has more of a premium feel to it. The employees are dressed in lovely suits, it's very brightly lit, it's well organized, and it's just a great variety of dressmaking fabric in there. There's lots of Italian silks and viscoses, fun cotton prints, and just a stunning set of both laces and prints for flamenco fabric, lots of polka dots. I got 2 fabrics there, which I'll show you. The first is this Italian silk print. So let me just get a bit closer, but I'll do B-roll as well. So you can see here, this is kind of an optic white background, and it has this intense blue design over it of swimmers and kind of beachgoers. I think it's really fun and unique. The fabric itself has a really interesting texture. I'm not sure what the technical name for this would be, but it definitely has some bounce and some structure to it. It's not just like a very, very slinky silk satin. It's still lightweight though and slightly sheer, so I think that I'll have to hold on to this one until next spring or summer. I assume it will become a blouse of some sort, maybe with some ruffles or flounces to highlight the structure of it, but we'll just have to wait and see. Next up, I have a slightly heavier fabric, which I'm hoping I can actually use this season. This is a yarn dyed cotton stripe, so the stripes are different colored threads as opposed to being kind of printed on the fabric. And it does have these really interesting small textural patches throughout. It's definitely a true medium weight fabric. It is very, very crisp, although experience tells me this will probably soften up quite a bit in the pre-wash. This one is destined to be another shirt, probably a more classic one like the Closet Corgena, I think would be a great choice. It's something that I want to wear in autumn with like rust-colored corduroy trousers. I have a rust pair of knit trousers, but corduroys would be fun. I just love the way pink and rust go together. And I think any leftovers would make a great tote bag. As an aside, let me get it. I picked up this quilted cotton tote bag when I was in France a few months ago. And you can see here, it's like a really bright kind of Indian block print style print. It has some interesting use of the contrast fabric stripes. And I just think that a tote bag like this, for one, it served me really well on this trip for just like going to the beach. I'm carrying around a knitting project. I'm working on a sweater and I had a lot of yarn to carry around. And I think that using something like a pattern like this for leftover striped fabrics, cottons, linens, etc. Would be a really good choice. The next shop that I want to highlight was actually an antique and interior design boutique called Antiksuk. The shop itself was very sweet. It had lots of homewares, lots of jewelry, but she had a whole section dedicated to vintage and antique beddings, fabrics, and trims. I had a great time browsing through it and particularly enjoyed all of the embroidered fabrics and trims. The fabrics themselves were a bit pricey. I wouldn't say like unreasonably so. It was just more that a lot of them were in really large pieces or still on the roll. So it was just too much for me to like legitimately buy it. I have no need for like 5 yards of a fabric. And I also was traveling on Ryanair, so you gotta think about Ryanair luggage on the way back. I did grab this vintage cotton remnant though. And again, I'll get close so you can see the print. It has these really cute little parrots on it in the bright green and then also on the black. I don't have a big piece of this. Maybe I have about 2 meters total. But they just the birds reminded me of the parrots that we saw at the Alcazar Palace. So it just felt like a really sweet souvenir to have. Again, this is one for the summer months, definitely. But initial idea that I have is like a vintage style wrap top, tie front blouse, maybe a big collar. You know I love that. Now, most of the other shops that I visited were quite small and generally focused on less relevant types of fabrics for me. So really serious special occasion wear, flamenco wear, or home decor. So I didn't buy anything else in Seville. However, one thing that really surprised me was the number of shops dedicated to fabric and trims for Catholic vestments. I've never seen that anywhere else, and I've been to plenty of other places where like the Catholic Church is really strong. I've been to Rome, and I've never seen like dedicated vestment fabric stores, and there were like multiple, sometimes on the same street. I haven't had much luck looking up why that is, but I know that a lot of very knowledgeable people watch this channel, so if you do know why, please let me know down in the comments. Anyway, in summary, Seville is a place where I wouldn't go to Seville just to do fabric and craft shopping. There's not loads and loads of shops, but the city itself was wonderful to visit. We had a fantastic time. Of course, would highly recommend it, as I think everyone who goes to Seville also says. So after a few days in Seville, Josh and I took the high-speed train to Madrid, which was really relaxing, super comfortable. Again, it also just gave me more knitting time. I'm speeding through my test knit. Now Madrid is lovely, but I will admit that I spent less time on the cultural and historical stuff than I did in Seville. It's not a knock on Madrid, it's just that I've been to Madrid multiple times for extended periods of time for work, so there just wasn't a need for me to like do more sightseeing. I've seen it. I did join Josh for the palace though, which was of course really fun to see again. It's still stunning, even for someone who tends to be in places like that and think like, I wonder how they got this money. But hey ho, let's talk about the fabric. Conveniently, Madrid has a wonderful kind of fabric shopping area. It's right off of the Plaza del Sol. It's very central, and there's like 4 or 5 shops right near each other, and then an extended network of like probably another 4 or 5 shops that are within a 10 or 15-minute walk. So for our first stop, we have Julián Lopez again. This shop, again, this location was also huge, and I have to say the service was a lot more proactive and probably a lot more friendly than in the Seville location. It's a similar offering, and I saw some of the same fabrics, but probably still a wider variety. I love the denims, the bouclés. There's some lovely wool there, and it was proudly displayed with like Made in England logo, so I didn't buy English wool in Spain. Doesn't make sense. I did buy a gorgeous printed velour fabric though. It is quite a lovely weight. Let's see if I can get closer and show you. Yeah, so it is quite a lovely weight. It has this big kind of abstract forest green or teal and white print with some gray throughout. I'm not actually quite sure of the fabric content. It doesn't feel like full polyester to me. even though like stretch velour usually is polyester, but doesn't have that same feel. And to be honest, it was pretty pricey. I think that this was almost 40 or 50 euro a meter. You know, some of you might say that that sounds like a ripoff for stretch velour, but to be fair to me, the salesman looked like Jeff Goldblum, and he literally like walked me and the whole roll of fabric outside to tell me how the fabric made me glow in the daylight. So I probably got seduced into buying this, but I still really like it. I have to say Josh was also with me and he was not impressed, but you know, I should be able to have fun. What should I make with this one? It is so drapey. I would describe it as like a firm horizontal stretch. It's not like the really spandexy velour. So it could be a sweater dress. I was thinking a bomber jacket, but it feels a little bit too drapey for that. I don't know. Would be very, very keen to know your thoughts. Next up in Madrid, we have Tejidos Rebecca Ruiz, which is right across from Julián Lopez. This shop kind of feels like it's in a townhouse, and it's just beautifully curated and, again, really well lit. There are some stunning special occasion fabrics in this shop, but I was particularly drawn to the embroidered linens and had to pick one up for myself. This one, again, was a bit of a splurge fabric, but it just really felt like something that I could not easily get in England. It has a kind of natural colored linen base, and you can see kind of the base fabric more if I flip it around, as well as this really chunky three-dimensional black embroidery sitting on top of it. So I have quite a big piece of this fabric. It was kind of my main Madrid souvenir. This is one that I do want to sew with this autumn as well. I'm not quite sure what to make, but I know that I want it to be a jacket. So I've made the Megan Nielsen Hovea jacket before, but there's also the ready to sew Pekka jacket, which I think would work quite well with this. The other item I've considered is making a vintage pattern. Of course, I'm always going to consider that. And that would probably be something like in the style of like a boxy swing type coat. I do think it would be cool. Would definitely want to toile anything I make before I cut into this fabric. But let me know what you think. I was so close to buying some of the Rebecca Ruiz custom satin prints in that shop as well, which were so vibrant and so colorful. I think one of the like brightest fabric shops I've seen. I did manage to resist though, just because, to be honest, it's already too cold to be buying something like that for England. I was running out of storage space or like luggage space, and they were polyester. They were very, very high quality polyester. I'm not like just wholesale knocking polyester, but it's just not my favorite fabric to either sew with or to wear. Lastly, we need to talk about the haberdasheries in Madrid, the Mercerias. As an aside, I know that when I'm pronouncing these words, I should be using like the sound instead of the sound. But when I was little, I had a lisp, and I was in speech therapy for like years of primary school to make sure that I didn't like lisp on the letter S. So now it's actually genuinely quite hard for me to say like Merceria. Anyway, Madrid has some of the best haberdasheries I've ever seen. And they are like properly traditional, right in the same square as the other shops I've mentioned. I was particularly drawn to Merceria Amira, and this little shop is just like packed with stuff. The variety of trims and ribbons were amazing. I particularly liked that there were also like big binders out, so you could just flip through those, find the trim that you wanted, tell him the number, and he would go kind of find it in the shop for you. I did get a bunch of different things from this shop. I got on the giant rickrack train, which I've been meaning to get on all summer and didn't manage to have time. So I got 3 different colors of this. The first is this kind of beige color. I'm not sure how well that's going to pick up, but it's just like a basic tan. I got navy. This is the widest of the 3. So you can see here, look at that, how fun is that? And then I got a really, this is gonna totally wash out, bright watermelon pink. I wonder if, can I get this to focus? I might just need to insert a photo. I also got some of their raffia trims, and I'm not quite as sure what I'm going to make with them. I'm envisioning either details or like strapping on something like a tote or a wristlet. But first I got this one. Will you focus? I'll just add pictures of all of these. And then I got one that's more like a cotton woven, or I think it's like raffia or something. I got a few meters of all of these trims. Again, lots of these will probably wait until the summer months, but at least with the giant rickrack, I'm hoping that I can find a way to use at least the dark blue or the navy for winter, maybe down like the side of a pair of loose fit pants, but we'll see. The other Merceria I want to highlight is, oh my gosh, I forgot the name and do I have this written down? I don't have this written down. It was the Almacén something, but I will put it in the notes down below. This shop was so interesting. It was a really traditional one, and to be honest, if you're like as someone whose Spanish is not good, like kind of not non-existent, but not good, it was a little intimidating. Basically, there are these long counters and there's like different stands in front of each, and a salesperson is manning each of those sections. You go to the salesperson, you kind of look through the items and they're displayed in front of the stand. You ask for what you want and the salesperson will go behind, and they're still behind the counter. There are these huge shelves and they'll count out what you need. As an aside, how cool are those button carousels? I've never seen that. I absolutely love them. I was spending like an embarrassing amount of time like just standing out of the way playing with them. But this shop really just had everything. I've never seen such a well-stocked haberdashery. There were buttons, there were clasps, there were buckles, yarn, there was underwear, which I know is like traditional to sell in that type of shop. They even had supplies for traditional lace making, like the kind of bobbin lace that people make. I've never seen that for sale anywhere else, and it just made me so happy to know that there's people who like know how to do that, because I can't imagine trying to learn it. Overall though, Madrid is just a fantastic destination for fabric and craft lovers. There are plenty of other shops that I didn't touch on, including some really gorgeous yarn shops. I just am highlighting the places where I made purchases so that we're not like here all day. Of course, lots of great food, great drinks, so I'm very, very happy that we stopped there. So for our last section, we're going to be covering the final week of our trip, which was just a few different stops in Catalonia. The main place that we stayed in, Catalonia, didn't have any craft stores. This is not at all a complaint. This seaside town is stunning, and Josh and I were really just relaxing, swimming in the sea, drinking nice food, having cheap wine. We are both people who are like genuinely quite bad at relaxing, so in order for us to have a truly restful vacation, we basically just have to go to places where we're a little bit isolated and there's not loads and loads of options for stuff to do. However, we actually drove part of the way from Madrid to Catalonia, and we picked up the car in Girona. The wait for a rental car was like annoying. You know, it's rental car places, you're always going to have a bad time. But Josh was an absolute hero and was basically like, I will sit here waiting 30 minutes by myself and you go see if there's a fabric or yarn store. Maybe he just wanted to get rid of me, who knows, but either way, I was very, very grateful. There was luckily one yarn store, like a 10-minute walk, so I had just enough time to hustle there, do a quick loop and hustle back, and that's literally the only thing I saw in Girona. But I did want to pick up some Spanish yarn on this trip. Again, Spanish merino wool, manchego wool is historically so important, and I want to support it. I want to keep that alive. The shop that I went to, Knitting Girona, was so cute. Like many of the other yarn shops that I stopped in Spain, there was definitely a slant towards linen and cotton yarn, as well as lots of thread for macrame. I don't really love knitting with cotton. I think it's pretty, it's hard on my hands. But I can also see why loads of wool sweaters is like not a practical thing for most people in Spain. But I did pick up 2 skeins of locally produced yarn. I have them here, and these are both by, the brand is Casa Sol Handmade. It is called Ama La Lana. And again, you can see the 2 colors I have. I got this teal and this, what color would this be? I mean, it's just brown or tan. I feel like I should come up with a prettier color name. These are both a super soft DK weight yarn, and what's interesting about them is that they're actually made from about 20% wool, 50% viscose, and the remainder nylon. I haven't really seen that yarn combination before, but again, it's super soft, and I was particularly drawn to the elasticity. So let me see if I can show you that. There's just a lot of bounce to this yarn, and one of the reasons, again, that I don't like plant fibers normally is because they just tend to really, really stretch out, and I find sizing patterns with those types of yarns difficult. In terms of what I want to use this for, I'm hoping to make some DK weight kind of house socks with them. I'm hoping that the 50% viscose will help, prevent me from getting sweaty sweet, because sometimes those really thick wool socks, there's times in England where I can wear those in the winter, but it's not kind of the full winter. So very excited about these. Again, just really felt like something I couldn't easily buy in England. Now, last but definitely not least, we have another yarn shop. This shop was actually in a huge antique market that we popped into, and this is in Sant Cugat de Vallès, and we stopped there on our drive back to the Barcelona airport. This is what I mean when I say that Josh and I kind of can't relax. Like, we will fill up every second of a trip. Even like the drive back to the airport, we will leave an hour early so we can stop at a market. I will say this is probably the best antique market I've ever seen. We didn't get enough time to see even like a third of it in the 2 hours that we were there, maybe 1 to 2 hours. One thing that I do have to spotlight, this isn't craft related, was the bookstore in there. It is like floor to ceiling, used in antique books. It has beautiful chandeliers, and there's a stage in the back for performances with a bar. You can like sip Spanish fortified wines and watch performers in the back of an antique bookshop. Like, what more? What more do you want? This stop was actually not planned for craft shopping, but serendipitously there was a stunning little shop there, and this shop was called Knot Lab. Like knot as in like K-N-O-T. The shop had a lot of beautiful supplies for knitting, but I think it was mainly focused on like weaving and macrame. I was really loving seeing all of the unique tapestry fibers on offer. I was digging through some fabric remnants and looking at the vintage buttons. It was at this last shop, like a mere few hours before our flight, where I finally found the Spanish merino wool of my dreams. Let me get it out to you. Package them so nicely in this, see this little bag. It says Knot Lab on it. This yarn is produced by a company called De Lana, and it is called Rustica, which is a very appropriate name. This is a very lightly spun and minimally processed worsted or Aran weight yarn. If I get closer, you can see the like little bits of straw that have made it into the finished product. And you can also just like smell it. It is pure sheepy goodness. I only bought 2 balls again. By this point I was out of space. Like I already had to put a bunch of my stuff in Josh's suitcase to be able to like be under the baggage limit, and then like where I wore like so many clothes on the plane. I was way too warm. Anyway, I want to use these 2 balls to make a pair of colorwork mittens. Both Florence of Handmade by Florence and Celine of the Woozy Knitter, 2 knit tubers, have made stunning Norwegian Selbu mittens lately, and I'm just jealous. I want in on the action. I'm planning to use the Speedy Selbu pattern from Skandir Knits, which is really meant to teach beginner colorwork knitters how to work those Norwegian colorwork patterns. I've actually never knitted colorwork before, but if I manage to be decent at it, I would love to make a pair of these for my mom and or my Grammy for Christmas. Mom, since you are probably watching, would you be interested in Selbu mittens? Do you wear mittens? Would Grammy wear mittens? And you know, all 3 of us can match. I hope you want to. Either way, I'm very excited about this, and it was just so nice to kind of cap off the trip by really finding my holy grail item. I so hope that you enjoyed this video and enjoyed seeing snippets from our travels. I'm just really happy. I feel very lucky that Josh and I got to take this trip, and we had a wonderful time exploring. We each got time to focus on our interest. We got to spend a lot of time together, and I just love like chatting to people in all of the different shops. I may be repeating myself here, but if you are a crafty person who's going on a holiday, I really do think it's worth taking the time to pop into a few shops, a few independent boutiques. For one, it just kind of extends the fun of the trip by giving you a project to work on long after you're home. I know that I'll really be enjoying, you know, sewing my embroidered jacket and knitting my mittens, and I'll be doing that in the London winter, but I can be imagining the Spanish summer. I also fully recognize that being able to take a trip at all is a privilege, let alone shopping at independent stores while you're there. So I'm not here to make anyone kind of feel bad about how they're spending their hard-earned cash, how they're spending their hard-earned vacation time. I am just pointing out that these types of shops only survive if we support them, and I just love the idea of supporting the crafty community around the world, especially when we're focused on these local products. I'll be back with another video in about 2 weeks, and that's going to be the long-awaited video on sewing machine embellishment. So making embellishments on garments with your sewing machine, not on like decorating your sewing machine. I'm just finishing some last items before editing that one. But if you do want to hear more from me, of course subscribe. But you can also find me over on Instagram, where I'm at the same handle, just at Steph Sewn. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll see you very soon. Bye!